So good afternoon to you. Thank you for sparing your time this afternoon to be with us in the media briefing on the results of the company for the second quarter ended 30th September. Two disclaimers before we proceed further with the presentation. One is towards the forward-looking statements that could be made in the course of our conversation. And second is you are sitting in the premises of a company which essentially works on project business, and that too infrastructure project business. And our business does not lend itself to 90-day evaluation of progress as the markets would like. So the numbers that you're going to see on a quarterly updates are not going to be representative of the position at the end of the year. And one quarter is too small a time for us to really turn around project business and much more the infrastructure business. Having said that, let's look at how we have performed between 1st of July 2015 and 30th September. Revenues have gone up by 11% for quarter 2, and for the half year it's moved up by 9%. EBITDA margins for the quarter 2 has moved up by 5 basis points, and for the half year it's down by 88 basis points. This reflects the income that we had from a substantive transaction last year when we divested Dhamra Port, and the profits are embedded in the margins that you see. The profit after tax for the quarter 2 is up by 16%, and for the same reason of the one-off Dhamra sale, they are down by 12% at the half-year level. Order inflows have been down by 28% for the quarter 2 and down by 25% for the half-year, reflective of the investment momentum in the economy that we see today. The order book, however, has moved up by 14% both for quarter 2 as well as for the half year. To start with, let's look at how the orders have panned out for the company for the quarter. The company has won 286 billion rupees worth of orders in quarter 2, which together with the 264 billion rupees worth of orders that it has won on quarter 1 makes it a total of 550 billion for the half year. April 1st to 30th September. This is down by 25% as compared to 732 billion of the corresponding period previous year. There are a couple of things to bear in mind when we reflect on the way the order inflows are shaping. One is in the previous year there have been both domestically and internationally certain large chunky orders which helped us to clock larger order flow than what we normally do in the first 2 quarters of the year. You will recall that we are often H2 oriented in terms of orders, and that's the way the project orders play out. As in a contrast to that normal trend, last year was some big ticket wins both in India in terms of power sector. We won some large orders in the power sector. We also won some defense orders last year, and we won a large international job in Kuwait. All of this were not repetitive in nature, and consequently the order inflow in the current year are devoid of such large wins. The second aspect to the order inflow is I think it is a fact that the investment momentum in the economy, despite a lot of efforts that various stakeholders are putting in, is yet to really pick up. There is excess capacity in most of the sectors, and the private sector are more worried at this point in time about better capacity utilization and profitable utilization of existing capacities than spending their time and energy in trying to add to capacity. So the entire demand momentum has to go up in the system for their capacity to be better utilized, for them to talk about new project orders, and then L&T gets into business. So there is a cycle which has a lead lag, and we are still at the lag end of the cycle. Secondly, thanks to the oil prices staying low, the Middle Eastern projects have got into review mode. It's very important for all of us to appreciate that they've not been as much shelved as they've been taken up for review. Because while it is true that the oil prices are low and hence the economics at the output level is very different as compared to the time that they originally conceived when oil was $100 to a barrel, it is also true that times such as these is the right time to add capacities. So it is a balance between cost of lower capacity and the lower economics at the output end. And we find many of these projects are getting reshaped rather than completely abandoned. But this process would take some time and hence it would take a little while for companies like us who are engaged with them to revisit the bids and the tenders and start bidding and winning for jobs. So we do think it's a phase that we are passing through, and the company would be able to, as both domestic economy and Middle East gets used to better conditions, we could see a little more robustness in the order inflow. The order book has reached 2,44,000 crores, very significant and pretty large, easily covering the next 8 to 12 quarters of revenue of the company. The domestic slowdown in orders during the current year is perceptible. Consequently, the share of international orders are up 35% in the half year as compared to the previous year, which was about 30%. The order book as well as moved up at 28% of the total order book that we have to be executed on international jobs and 72% on the domestic jobs. Where did the orders come from? Bulk of it came from the infrastructure segment, and that's where the spends are happening today. And much of the spends are also happening courtesy the government trying to push some of the sectors like transportation, power transmission, distribution, and water. The benefit of these spends are reflected in 52% of the orders that the company has won, being in infrastructure sector. The rest of the sectors are really scattered in terms of order inflows. Much of the ordering that has been happening, barring power, where 35,000 crores worth of orders have been tendered out, and it's another matter that we have not been successful in those orders. And it is also another matter that we really do not mind not being successful at the prices at which these orders are being won. But barring power, all the rest of the sectors are investing more in terms of capacity augmentation or maybe beneficiation or productivity enhancements. The investments are of that nature rather than brownfield or greenfield expansion. For sake of completeness, all the revenues that we earn in services business are reflected back as orders, because unless the orders are placed on us, we don't deliver the services. So they account for 19% of the order pie that we've had for the year so far. The order book, following the flow of orders from infrastructure sector, 1,75,000 crores out of 2,44,000 crores are from infrastructure sector, and followed by 23,000 crores worth of orders from power sector, 11,000 from metals, minerals, material handling, and 14,000 from hydrocarbon. The rest of them are reasonably small to merit a separate discussion at this point in time. The performance of the group, the company has earned revenue from its operations at a net level of 233 billion rupees for Q2, which is an 11% increase over the previous year. Of the 233 billion, 76 billion rupees came in from international revenues, which accounts for 33% of the revenue. It's also interesting to note that the growth of international revenues is 19%, whereas the overall revenue growth is 11%, which means that the execution challenges that remain in the domestic projects continue through one more quarter. All the operating costs, the manufacturing, the construction, the staff cost, the selling, administration, and the cost of doing the entire operations add up to about 208 billion rupees for the Q2, which is a 10% increase over the 188 billion of Q2 of the previous year. The increase in cost is much lower than the increase in sales, which does benefit the EBITDA to stay to maintain stability. Insofar as the half year is concerned, the net revenues earned by the company at 436 billion rupees is up 9%. The sales from international jobs continue to be similar to the Q2 position at 33% of the overall sales, and for the half year, the international sales have grown by 27%. All of the cost of operations add up to 387 billion rupees, which is a 10% increase over the corresponding period of the previous year. The EBITDA for the company for Q2 has been at 25.92 billion rupees, which is 11% growth over the 23.34 billion of the previous year. For the half year level, it is flattish at 48.82 billion rupees, which is very similar to 48.41 billion rupees of the previous year. The previous year, the H1 of FY15 had the gain from divestment of Dhamra. So consequently, we had the benefit of EBITDA margins of the previous year enjoying the gain, and hence it is at 12.1% as compared to the 11.2% of the current year. Now, the decline in 90 basis points is largely explained by this single transaction, whereas the margin at the quarter level is pretty stable. The interest expenses for the quarter has gone up sharply, largely because we commissioned 3 road projects in one of the subsidiary companies of the company, which is into toll road business. And when you commission projects in a group, the interest expenses, which hitherto was capitalized for the project, comes onto the financial statement. So much of the increase is this, and because it was a quarter where the adjustment is seen, you find a certain sharp increase, but this will pan out over a longer period of time to more normal. The interest rate that the company at the group level is incurring is at about 9.5%, which in today's time and for the sector that we are participating in is pretty competitive. The depreciation increase is also similarly because of the capitalization of these 3 road projects, and hence apart from the increase in the depreciation because of the Companies Act, the other portion which leads to this increase is this capitalization. Other income has been fairly stable at 2.19 billion rupees, largely reflecting the interest earnings and the dividend earnings of the company. For the profit after tax for the quarter 2 at 9.96 billion rupees, we are up by 16%, and for the half year we are at 16.02 billion rupees, which is down by 12%. Again, the same reasons of extraordinary income that we had in the previous year. We, as you know, are divided into 10 segments, and namely infrastructure, power, metallurgical, material handling, heavy engineering, electrical automation, hydrocarbon, the developmental projects, information technology, technology services, financial services, and the rest. Now we look at a summary of performance of each of these segments now. Starting with infrastructure sector, the segment revenue for quarter 2 has been at 106 billion rupees, which is 11% higher than the quarter 2 of the previous year. And for the half year at 189 billion rupees is up by 13%. The EBITDA margins of this sector for quarter 2 at 8.5% reflects a 1.5% decline to the previous year's quarter 2. And for the half year at 9.5% represents a decline of 60 basis points. The decline is largely on account of the status of the jobs and the mix of the jobs as compared to the H1 or Q2 of the previous year. The percentage of jobs which are waiting to be valued for their margins are larger in this quarter and this half year. Consequently, we have to wait for the jobs to reach their margin recognition threshold before the margins are released in the statement. So it's a point in time situation, and this is not reflective of the trend that we see for infrastructure segment as going forward. Insofar as hydrocarbon segment is concerned, the segment revenue is up 7% for the quarter at 19.33 billion rupees, and for the half year it's up 23% at 41.23 billion rupees. As we are executing the jobs that we are having on hand, we are able to see the momentum increase on the revenue side. But what is very important is we need to keep winning jobs to be able to sustain the growth in revenue. So future growth of revenue past the current order book would be reflected and determined more by the order wins that we do. The good news, however, is clients in India are looking at investment in augmenting the energy resources, and the low oil prices have also encouraged the mid and downstream people to look at better opportunities to maximize on the refining margins that they currently enjoy. So I think going forward, it does look, once we are out of the difficulty of the challenged projects that we are executing in the Middle East, and we are almost at the completion, the last leg of those, the way ahead looks promising. Looking at power segment, I did mention at the beginning, there have been orders. I think both the public sector units as well as the state utilities, power generation companies have been busy putting out tenders. There's fair bit of competitive intensity because these orders are available to the market after a while, and hence the price points at which these orders are being won is extremely challenging to the cost structure. Having said that, it is good to be in a position to be able to participate in bids rather than worry about a lack of any investment activity. We do believe that over time we should be able to take advantage of this changing momentum in the power sector. The revenues are up by 21% for the Q2, largely because of progress on execution on the jobs that we are currently engaged with, and for the half year they are at up by 17% at 25 billion rupees. The EBITDA margins are up by 3.1% for the Q2 at 16.1, and down by 3% at 13.3 for the half year. This classically reflects the volatility in the project business and how misleading it could be if people were to draw linear conclusions out of the margins flow. Materials, minerals and material handling, the entire sector is still stressed. All of us know about the state in which both ferrous and non-ferrous industries are in. With the softening of the commodity prices, we do not see substantial improvement in the near term for this sector. So we are going to maybe see over the next 1 or 2 years some gradual improvement creeping into the sector as people begin to find economic reasons for making investment in this sector. However, the segment revenue at 5.5 billion for Q2 and 10.37 billion for H1 does reflect the depleting order book. And if they're not going to be augmented by fresh orders, we are going to see for a period soft revenues in this segment. The margins are reflective of the softness both in terms of order inflow as well as the revenues, and hence for the quarter the margins for the segment is 5.5%, and for the half year it is at 2.8%. Heavy engineering, the segment has degrown. The revenue at 6.15 billion for Q2 and 12.37 billion for half year reflects lower revenues as compared to the previous year. Pretty much like the MMH segment that we spoke a little while ago, thanks to the soft oil prices, the orders for hydrocarbon equipments have dried up. There is excess capacity globally, and until the ordering momentum returns to the process plants and the hydrocarbon equipment, we are going to see a period of lull in this segment. The other aspect of the business of this segment is also nuclear power, and since the nuclear power program is still being awaited in terms of development and orders, unless the issues surrounding the nuclear power creation and investments are resolved, which we hope will happen in the remaining 2 quarters of the current year, we will see the nuclear power orders are also very limited. So consequently, the heavy engineering segment, the reduction in revenue is a result of depleting order book again, and the margin softness is reflective of both a lower order book being executed, margins having been recognized along the way as these jobs are coming to an end, and as the jobs are coming to an end, fair bit of cost and time overrun which is not yet compensated by the customer. So we have the segment at a negative margin of 15.9 for Q2 and 4.7 for H1. We do believe with additional orders and settlement of some of these discussion points with the customers, this segment should return back to its traditional margin levels. Electrical and automation business has had a very soft period. I think the general market has been very soft, not really growing. None of the competitors, and all of them are multinationals, have really expanded their market share. And the story for L&T's electrical business is pretty similar. At 11.24 billion rupees for quarter 2 and 21 billion rupees for H1, we see a decline in the revenue as compared to the previous quarter and half year respectively. Reflecting the decline in revenue, the margins for the quarter at 12.9% is down by 80 basis points, whereas for the half year it is up 30 basis points at 11.8%. The development project business is an aggregation of the toll roads that we do, the power development projects that we do, as well as the port that we own in Chennai. We find that the increase in the segmental revenue for quarter by 37% from 9.84 billion to 13.5 billion is on account of commissioning of the second unit of the Nabha Power Plant, and about 4 to 8% increase in the various stretches of the toll roads, reflecting in improved revenue. At the half year level, revenues are at 25.53 billion, down by 18%. The EBITDA margins for this business is a bit of a misnomer, because this business has a lot of investments, so fair bit of depreciation and interest which lies below EBITDA margins click in. So as is normally expected for this segment, the EBITDA margins are healthy at 25.9 and 26% respectively for quarter 2 and a half year. Financial services business has done well. As you know, it's a listed entity and we own 68% of the company's shares presently. The income has grown by 16% for the quarter at 18.63 billion, and for the half year at 36.46 billion rupees, it's grown by 18%. The EBITDA margins have improved smartly, largely because of good liability management and containing of the non-performing assets. So the EBITDA margins at 18.1% for the quarter is up 2.4%, and at 16.6% for the half year is up by 1%. Information technology and technology services have done well. On dollar terms, their revenues have grown by 11 to 12%, and aided by the currency movement, the rupee value of the revenue growth is at 23% and 22% respectively for quarter 2 as well as H1. At 22 billion rupees for quarter 2 and 43 billion rupees for H1, the business is on a strong footing. We have the EBITDA margin at 21%, up 2.5% for the quarter, and at 21.1%, up 1.7% for the half year. The efforts that the company is taking in augmenting its business, investing in talent and augmenting its sales force and delivery capabilities, beginning to show some results. All the rest of the business that we do are put into others segment, which is actually a residuary segment. It's a segment which does not move the needle, so consequently there is an aggregation that is being done. But the revenue, however, for this segment for the quarter is up at 16.27 billion rupees, a 13% growth over the quarter 2 of the previous year, and the growth has been largely driven by the realty business that we do, the valves business and the industrial machinery business. The segment revenue at the half year at 31 billion rupees is up by 16%, and the EBITDA margins are fairly stable at 18.9% for the quarter and 20% for the half year. So with this, ladies and gentlemen, we will throw the forum open for Q&A. Thank you.
Shilpa from Bloomberg TV. I wanted to know, are you sticking to your guidance of 15% in terms of your order inflow and in terms of revenues?
What would you like to hear? If you look at the half year position, we are at 55,000 crores. We were at 73,000 crores in the previous year. So there is already a backlog that I have built at the half year level. The asking rate in the context of opportunities that is available in the market, both in India and outside, looks steep, even by L&T standards. So our assessment is, as compared to possibly a 15% increase over the 1,55,000 crores that we bagged orders in the previous year, we guided for a 15% increase. It looks to us at this stage, and all of us will be surprised while making these predictions, because in project business, few orders swing the percentage growth or degrowth significantly. But venturing into a best case estimation at this point in time, I think 5 to 7% kind of growth over the previous year seems to be the way we could land up as compared to the original guidance. But as I mentioned to you, I think a few orders would rattle these estimations big time. Insofar as revenue is concerned, fortunately, much of the revenues come only from our backlog. So we don't really have to win orders to clock revenue. We've been running around 10% level so far at the half-year level. Given that the domestic revenues have not shown tendencies of picking up because of the issues and the challenges relating to the execution, we would possibly think that we would land up anywhere between 10 and 15. 15 is what we had guided. Maybe the best case could be, let's say, 12% or thereabout, something like that, I think is what we are able to assess. It's very difficult to predict in our business, because if it is manufacturing, product oriented, or even service oriented, where it's time and more material, it's easy to predict to the second decimal. But our guess is, I think we would be short of our guidance at the end of the year.
Yeah. So I have a couple of questions. One being, what will be the working capital to sales percentage as of now?
Thank you for giving me a chance to address the good news. We've been talking about this, and internally in the company, with help from all the business units, we've been fighting hard. And I remember mentioning to you in the last couple of meetings that in my assessment it had peaked. It was around 25% of revenue. As of September, we are running at 23.5 of revenue. So there is an improvement, and that's reflected in the cash flows as well. We are working hard now to make sure that it sticks, and whatever improvement we can do from this point in time we'll try to do.
And also, sir, there is one exception item which in the note is written, there's some divestment that you have done of 309 crores, some divestment deals. So if you could just throw some color on that. And also, you already spoke about your hydrocarbon business. So if you could just see when do we see the pain coming off from the hydrocarbon business?
Okay. The extraordinary or exceptional item was the sale of stake that we did in L&T Finance Holding. We sold 5% of our stake, and we also exited one of the strategic investments that we made in one of our vendor firms. These two together constitute the exceptional income. Insofar as hydrocarbon is concerned, I think we are on the mend. As I've been mentioning over the past few meetings, we are at the fag end of closing out all the difficult projects. Many of them have closed out, and they are in that critical phase of client negotiation when you settle claim and counterclaim. You would see in the charts, as compared to the previous year, the numbers are much smaller, even though negative. We expect the negatives to run out in a very small manner during the course of the year in terms of segmental revenue. Our assessment is by the end of this year, we should leave behind the pains of the hydrocarbon sector. We've got a couple of good orders to execute on hand. And as I mentioned to you, we have about 14,000 crores worth of order book to be executed. Having wizened up by the execution challenges of the previous orders, we should execute them better and hopefully return to normalcy in 16-17.
Also, on the road front, one last question. On the road front, sir, on the IDP, are you all in talks for any kind of stake sale as such? And what is the status on the stake sale that you have done to a Canadian pension fund in the beginning of this year?
There are two aspects to your question. One is the partnership that we have with CPPIB. That is at the holding company level. And they've invested about 1,000 crores last year, and they're due to invest another 1,000 crores in this December. With that, the investment program that they had undertaken will come to an end. The investment is coming in form of compulsorily convertible preference shares to be converted anytime between FY16 and FY18. we will have to work out when exactly the conversion is going to happen. So that is to enable IDPL at the holding company level to be able to participate and finance projects that it has undertaken. The stake sale that we are talking about on the SPVs, the roads, etc., is part of the monetization strategy. We are in the business of developing projects, commissioning them, and churning them. We are not in the business of operating them through 20-25 years. So it's part of the business model that we run. We have done this with many of the assets in the past. And today we have a critical mass of road transport, road assets, stored road assets, which we are trying to work on a format to monetize. We did try a year ago through overseas listing, but India came up with its own version of investment trust, and there are still some issues to be ironed out with this. I do believe that over long term, it's a good platform that India should nurture. Because ultimately, if government wants private sector to participate in public assets, you need to have public ownership of the assets and not restricted to just commercial banks or few balance sheets. So if you look at it from a vision point of view, I think this platform is a good platform. Obviously, like anything good, it takes time. You'll have to start work around the bureaucratic difficulties that you will have in putting out a model which is workable. So in my opinion, it will take 6 to 12 months for this to really pan out well. We are looking at that opportunity as one of the ways to monetize the assets. But this need not necessarily be the only way.
Good afternoon, sir. Ashwin Mohan here from ET Now. You have said that it's asked as far as meeting your annual order inflow guidance and revenue guidance is concerned. And you also mentioned that it may take further time for a significant pickup in business activities on the ground. So what I want to know is, by which quarter do you expect a revival in business opportunities? Is it going to be Q3, Q4? Or do you expect it to slip into the next year? That's the first question. The second question is, there have been a lot of IPOs that have hit the market, a few big ones in recent times. Could you give us an update on the L&T Infotech IPO? And my third question is, could you also give us an update on the non-core asset monetization drive? Can we expect a few divestments to be announced in this year?
I'll share the dais with SNS and...
Interesting questions and three very divergent topics. We try to answer that. What Shankar mentioned when he said about order inflow is, at the beginning of the year, to be frank and honest, I think we were a little more optimistic. We continue to be that. But then as you race along, you find issues happening, which are typical, which are not left us behind. You see offshoots of positivity in many places. For example, you find in the IT sector a revival. So buildings and factories, as you see, it could have far more progression and orders than what was thought about. At the same time, in the residential side, you find that due to various issues of payment and developmental issues that come in, right-of-ways, height, etc., projects are not moving as fast as possible. There are unsold stocks, so maybe developers are also not plowing in money to do the development as fast as we thought they would do at the beginning of the year. This is a typical problem in an economy where cash is little strapped as we see it. On the road sector, we have had some phenomenal success during the later part of last year and during the early part of this year. We expect traction as we go along during the year, and we think we should achieve our budget. The dedicated freight corridor in the railway sector also sees a lots of positivity. We have bid for a few major contracts. We hope for results as we go by in the next 2, 3, 4 months. So if all this goes through, then these two sectors should reach what it is. On the power transmission side, which is basically substations, transmission lines that we do, the trends are pretty positive. Both that business, as most of you would be aware, is 50% India and 50% international. India also seems to be doing reasonably well on the transmission side. On the distribution packages, the APDRP schemes as we call it, as well as on the substation, which is part of transmission. On the international, Middle East has seen a slowdown, but for Qatar. The reason being the petrol crude prices have come down, and expansion schemes are taking a backseat because of other issues that is coming up with their reserves running tight and money being spent on other matters than purely developmental. I think this trend will continue for a year or so till we see stabilization in prices there. So keeping this in view, we have entered Africa. So we have seen projects in both the north and eastern part of Africa, and we seem to get a good traction there. Yesterday there was a good summit between the African leaders and the Indian government. The Indian government has also announced credit facilities which will essentially, in our view, tend towards Indian companies going and doing projects there, which will be used for developmental projects there. I'm sure power transmission and such other projects would also be part of that overall process that is going on, and we hope to see more traction there. We also made some beginning in Far East. We got our first transmission order in Malaysia. We are L1 and a few more jobs there. L1 is we have placed competitively in a few more contracts there. Let's see how it goes. So power transmission seems to have done well. Similarly, on the water side, we seem to have a lot of traction. The Ganga Clean Action Plan, river interlinking schemes, waste treatment facilities as per the JNURL scheme and of the Deen Dayal Upadhyay scheme, as it is called now, is seeing traction in many towns, cities, and we hope to benefit from that. As you are aware, looking at all this, we also started a business called Smart World Communication to capture the government's thought process on Smart World, because L&T is ideally placed onto this. So it is a contribution of many businesses within L&T, which is on the construction side. We have the Smart World, we have the L&T Infotech, we have the L&T Technology Services, we have the Electrical Automation Group, and some of our other businesses playing a part. As some of you may be aware, we are right now doing a huge optic fiber cable network for the defense forces, which is about 20,000 kilometers covering the west and southern parts of the country. As we go forward, we see the end part of this, which is the various networks, which is the network solutions, the various switches, routers, etc. coming in. So we have bid for such projects with Ministry of Defense, BSNL. These tenders are not yet been opened. And as Shankar correctly mentioned, you could suddenly see some spark in our order inflow as we go by if we are positive in some of the results of the tender as we see. We have bid for quite a bit of tenders there. This is, you can say it is some kind of an opening up area where we see fundamentally a lot of activity, and as the country goes forward to the Bharat broadband program, and the government is to realize transfer of money from the central government directly to the bank accounts of the various people who opened accounts. This is a fantastic medium to do it. So you want to capture the space. This includes tenders like the Nirbhaya Mission, NASCON, etc. So if this goes through, we should benefit substantially out of it. But there is competition there. We have bid for it, and let's see how the traction goes. As such, when you see other businesses also including hydrocarbon, unfortunately India does not have too much of it. So we got to depend on Middle East. Middle East, if the crude prices comes down, they're going to slow on such projects. But we have bid for some projects because these were necessary from the previous development that was happening. And if we are lucky in even one or two of them, we see a way ahead there. The difficulties, as far as we are concerned, seems to be in heavy engineering and power. We need to see how to break through the logjam that is there at the moment. Hopefully, with the coal mining being allotted, coal mines getting developed, and power is a shortage as we see it into the future. If more power projects comes up, the competition should even out, and we should pick up more orders there. But that is not something which is immediate. It may take a year and a half, 2 years. So one has to be patient and see through that. Similarly, heavy engineering is again a function of how the Middle East develops, so the oil front, because bulk of the unit equipments that we make is towards the hydrocarbon sector, and domestically it is towards the nuclear sector. This 123 agreement, though it was done due to the nuclear liability issue, the principal matter of how to take care of liabilities had to be sorted out. Unless the government applies its mind and sorts that problem out, I don't see any revival in the nuclear industry as of date. They are optimistic, saying 3 months, 5 months to find a way out of the logjam, but fundamentally, I think the powers that be have to sit together and come out with a common platform to see how to take out this liability clause. But without doing that, big investments from foreign companies, as we have been talking about, from the countries allotted and the companies therein, will not come and invest. So, to conclude it, you see a lot of positivity. We feel excited in the morning, and with the afternoon you feel a little cooling off, and in the evening you want to go to sleep, and next day morning you come back charged again. So life goes on, we continue to be positive, and we hope to be where we ought to be.
May I request you to perhaps take your neck out and you know, I know I'm asking you to indulge in crystal gazing, but pick that quarter where you expect a significant pickup in business activity, Q3, Q4 or
I wish it was something like that. This is not something where you put on a switch and suddenly the lights are going to burn. I wish it was like that. I think you're talking about infrastructure. it's not one thing that turns it, it's a multiplicity of things. Well, the interest rates have come down, it's a positive thing. That the government is working unitedly is a great thing. That different ministers are meeting together and sorting out matters is a great thing. That land issue, you know where it is, but if it is tackled in a faster, better manner, it's a great thing. It's the green issues or the right-of-ways, the mining issues, some of it is the central government, some of it is different state government. There's no one switch to on, there are thousands of switches to on. So we are slowly seeing each one getting on, and at some point of time we see a bright light. We hope for that.
The IPO, LNT?
Well, we have, as you know, filed the prospectus for that, and we hope to have it anytime soon, so wait for it.
And the non-core asset monetization, right?
I think Shankar is better placed to answer that.
See, this is a constant engagement. The definition of core, the definition of non-core, these are all product of strategies at various points in time. What clearly the company is engaged in is to make sure that much of our energy and efforts are towards large, scalable, profitable businesses. So if there are in the portfolio some of the businesses which are subscale or not profitable, I think it's our responsibility to find a new home for those businesses. We've been doing this over many years now, except that over 80 years the company accumulates fair bit in the cupboards, that it takes time and effort to go after each one of them and clear up. Our belief is over the next 2-3 years, by the time India really picks up in its core areas where L&T as a company is brilliantly placed for future opportunity, much of this will get done. But these are pretty small and will not really move the needle in terms of the outcome.
Thank you, sir.
Government is planning to offer more than 100 PPP projects in road segment. So what kind of changes do you require to be made while offering these projects on the PPP mode? Because the previous experience has not been very good.
I'll answer that if you don't mind. See, the point is, we are one of the pioneers in PPP projects, and then we took some of those opportunities, put it together and formed the company L&T IDPL. And we own a fair bit of assets today. And at one point of time, it was said that EPC projects may not be there, and government has sort of withdrawn from typical cash jobs, and it would be more on developmental kind of projects where the companies would be required to invest in equity, we borrow debt, and then do those projects and on the EPC side make some money and see how to get a good return on the investments that we have made. If you see now fundamentally many of the companies that have entered, broadly there are in two categories. One of them are, most of them are EPC players who got into these developmental activities, and few of them are investors. Purely remained as investors and got a bit on the EPC side and got it done. If you now go through the balance sheet and rip it open, most of these balance sheets are now highly leveraged with huge amount of debts. To the extent that even the EPC business, they are not able to give bank guarantees or give deposits towards earnest money deposits for tenders. That's the status. Reason why it has happened is when you sign a concession agreement, there are two parts to it. There are some obligations which the concessionaire has to keep it up, and there are some obligations that the concessionaire has to keep it up. It does not happen. Many of these road jobs have got delayed due to right-of-way, environmental issues, traffic not being up to the mark, maybe aggressive bidding, maybe parallel roads developed because there was no support agreement from the states, so on and so forth. Tolls not being realized at the right time, leakages due to various reasons of political elections, etc., which is common in our country. You don't get revisions at the right time, so on and so forth. So unless you get these balance sheets of many of the private developers to some normal level, I have a grave doubt as to when this trust on public-private partnerships can come back again. So one of the sensible things that has happened over the period is that government, having realized it, did attempt to get across a fair amount of EPC projects so that companies who are essentially EPC players who had also gone into developmental mode could take some of these EPC road jobs. There were a fair amount of advances and secure advances and also the progress method of payment. You get that move the progress, collect the money, makes the money out of it, profits, pay off the interest and pare down the debts over a period of time, and then once your balance sheets are healthy, look into PPP projects again. Now this is something in our infrastructure sector cannot happen over a period of 6 months, 1 year. This is going to take 1.5 years, 2 years. One has to have the patience. And this gradual process is on right now. It's a very sensible process that has been put onto motion. Government at the same time is also planning some PPP projects because they do believe that some of the balance sheets are getting better. But it's a gradual process, one has to wait for that. Just by announcing PPP projects, I don't think there's going to be huge people showing interest to get into the sector right now because of the accumulated issues.
If I may just supplement, I think fundamentally, the partnership has to be well understood. Today, much of the difficulties are because one partner believes it's the problem of the other. So, in a PPP mode, when you're partnering with private sector or private sector with government, you own the concession end to end. So, it's the responsibility collective to make sure that the concession works. Now, if there is going to be a thinking which says that the private sector is there to profit out of a PPP, and the government begins to view its role as one of giving concession, then the equation changes. And PPP in whatever form will never work. You need to have the same seat at the table. So the current government's thinking hopefully has rallied around, and we see some of the pragmatic steps that they are beginning to take in terms of office orders and government communication. There is possibly better realization that you have to live with each other. You can't score one over the other for this at a philosophical level.
Nowadays, government is planning to close down more and more toll roads. Do you think it will adverse impact on the business sentiment regarding bidding and every aspect of toll roads?
And toll road means what? Shutting toll road means there are people who have invested money, there are banks which have lent money. So unless the government, unless your question is suggesting that the government will pay the lenders, pay the equity holders and take over the road and not toll it, it is not an ideal solution. I think today, just as we don't hesitate to pay for a bottle of water, we have to get used to paying for better facilities as a country. And it is our duty and right to do that. Now, this cannot be done away by just saying, okay, I will nationalize all the roads and hence it's back to free for all. Then you will have to go back through the potholes, and while you have the quality of cars getting better and better, and the best of classes are getting released in India without much time loss, you can't have these roads. So I think we have taken a step forward, and there is only one way to go, that is to move further and not move back.
So last one, sir. Mumbai is going to offer more than 30 to 40,000 crores of project in metro and other. How do you see this opportunity for L&T?
Very positive.
So what are your plans for bidding? Do you
We'll
think
bid for it. I think immediately is on is the Mumbai Metro from Colaba to CPES. We have also bid for it. We seem to be positive there. And I think the project is in the decision-making stage. We do hope the decision gets taken and we start the project. It's again, it's a very tough infrastructure project right under the city of Mumbai. So it will take 4 to 5 years or 5 to 6 years to complete. But I think that will wonderfully transform the way Mumbaikars live, because the entire traffic on the road will get taken away into a air-conditioned metro, and you get to whiz from Colaba to CPES in no time, and transforms life like what it has transformed in Delhi and many other cities, and that will be a good thing to happen. We also see developments on the Trans-Harbour Link, which is essential to get traffic further into Bombay and move traffic out of Mumbai. And if Trans-Harbour Link comes, and Navi Mumbai Airport is an important endpoint there from which the traffic from here has to be taken there. And if you have to reach the airport in time to catch the flight, that's the only way to do it. So one has to go through that project. There's also been thought process on the coastal road. I hope a decision is taken on that. I think it's also fairly bit advanced, and if decision can be taken on that, that will be good. So all these are important developments, and we are very positive that the governments are acting to stress this project towards this logical end here.
Good afternoon, Rajita here from ET. In the beginning of the year, you guys sounded much optimistic about the recovery in the sector. And you did explain what's happening. Can you just give us a sense of on the ground level, what has changed and what has not changed? I mean, SNS spoke about the various switches. So just help us understand what are the challenges on the ground for which you think the big ticket orders are yet not coming, and in terms of execution as well, where are the projects stuck right now?
I think, Rachita, you asked me to explain the entire performance of each business unit in a very, very thorough
No, no, what I'm trying to, okay, let me be more specific. For example, if we were to talk a year back or, on the same issue in execution and in terms of ordering, the key challenges that you guys would talk about is, that a lot of projects were not getting the land or the environment clearances.
Okay,
I'm trying to understand have those things changed?
Okay, let me try to explain it on a broader plane. Things that have gone well on the broader front is that you find stability in government decision making. Some good things has happened. The spectrum issue has been sorted out. The coal blocks have been allocated. Many of the green issues have been sorted out. Some of the ministries, especially to a large extent, the Ministry of Roads has started acting on many of the projects. Some of the projects initiated by the Ministry of Railways, like the dedicated freight corridor, have started bringing traction, and fair amount of contracts have been awarded, and few more are in the annual to be awarded. The Ministry of Telecommunication has been working on many of the programs. Ministry of Defence has started moving on many of their big ticket items and projects to be done. So these are some of the positive aspects that has happened. But fundamentally, let's understand there are certain issues which still remain and which has to be sorted out. These remain land acquisition. That due to the nature of our governance and politics has taken a bit of a spin, and we need to see how to get that back on stream, or how the powers that we sorted out, because without land, finally nothing can be done. Or the easier process of acquisition of land, let me say that nothing much can be done, and one needs to sort it out. Being a governance structure which is heavily based on rule of law, even if the intent is positive sometimes, there are many other ambits of governance and non-governance at work which have their own views of what should be done, if I can put it that way. And in a democracy like us, when people can have their own views, you can go to the court and demand certain action on certain things because you don't like it that particular way. Now these are something which one cannot get away easily, and one has to go through it. Maybe one could have a law to overcome some of these things, but I feel at the end of the day, everything cannot be sorted out by law. You got to go through a process to sort it out. Now this cannot be done away within a governance structure like this. So this will take its own time. You have a road and few people object to a particular right of way, then there is a process to go about it. It cannot be overridden by a technical order or by a government order. One has to go through the process to get the land and to take it forward. So these takes time. For example, one good thing has been done by the Ministry of Highways, NHAI, is that unless 90% or 80% of the land is through, one cannot start a project. That's a good thing. But to get 80% of the land, even after you announce the road, sometimes takes a year or 1.5 years. So you have to wait through that process. There's nothing can be done. There are mining rights or some green tribunal coming out with issues on don't mine here and that is banned and this is banned, and that goes through a process. There are many hydro projects that have been held up because the National Green Tribunal has passed a law on you cannot do hydro projects for certain reasons in certain areas. Now that has to be sorted out at the courts. The nuclear power liability clause is something which the Parliament has passed, and you have the nuclear liability issue hanging very much there. And that unless the politicals get together and find a way out of it, it is not something which you can simply get away with. You've got to find a solution to it, because at the end of the day, it's a law, therefore it's part of the constitution, and multinational or foreign companies coming here would tend to look at it, and their lawyers would advise them as such. So one has to go through that. The coal mines have been allocated, but many of them are got some forest areas, have got some local land clearance issues to connect to the mine lines. So these are issues that needs to be sorted out, and it is not one body which is doing it. You have the central government, you have the state government both to do it. So as you can see, many decisions have been taken, and these are very positive, good decisions. But sometimes the fruits of the decision take some time to come. We remain optimistic that the government is firing on all cylinders, and development has become a positive buzzword to talk about, and therefore these things will see traction and will see positivity finally. But it's going to take some time, and we are part of that process too.
Fair enough.
And coming back to performance, yes, one tends to look at a backlog and say, why don't you guys open the bucket faster and drain the water out? Internally also we are asked that question. It's a fair enough question. Many of the projects that we've taken are 2.5 years, 3 years. Now we do take these projects and we try to push it. We definitely, I would like to break this argument into two parts. One, on the infrastructure side, when you tend to push projects faster, there are sometimes milestones, there are sometimes right of way, there are sometimes you get some part but you don't get some part, then you get another part. To move your resources from a part which is finished, leave out a gap and go to the next part and do it, sometimes is a costly adventure and exercise from our internal point of view. So one has to slow down to see that we also pressurize the stakeholders available to give us continuous right of way to proceed with the job. Otherwise we tend to lose on mobilizing in one place, remobilizing in another way. On the real estate side, that is when I say real estate, the residential business and residential and commercial buildings business, which is a big part of our overall portfolio. You find today that due to the liquidity issues in the economy, many of the developers and others are not paying us. And sometimes an organization like us, Mobilize, we have various assets at site, we have staff and families attached to the site, and after 3-4 months if somebody does not pay us, what do? It's not easy for us to demobilize and then go to another site. It cannot happen like that. So we have to slow down and we have to see how to get the money out and then proceed with it. So this is a serious problem. Due to unsold stocks, due to the economy not maybe pushing that far ahead due to some of the bottlenecks that are still prevalent, but we hope that will get cleared. There is some hesitancy on how to move this faster. And therefore, though there is a backlog, which is good, which is healthy, and we are being maybe extra cautious and not to go whole hog to sort of protect it and also to see that we are protected as an organization. And that is what is seeing us in some of these ifs and starts in some other jobs. This is not, I don't want to generalize the problem, but it is there and one cannot get away from that.
Just one more question. Mr. Shankar Raman spoke about the competition in pricing in the power space. That's visible in most sectors. I mean, as and when an order is coming up, too many people chasing them. Can you just give us an outlook on the margins and the pricing competition, and to what extent is L&T comfortable tweaking the pricing to kind of keep the order book ticking?
I would put it like this, yes, in an economy when many things are not available, there is competition of course, and everybody to either fill his shops up or to keep his resources occupied would tend to go competitive. What we have done as a policy is that we quote our price. We do our workings as is from the basics, we do our zero cost costing as to say, we are sure about our costs and we believe the margin that we should get and quote for it. We negotiate hard. If we have to give a small margin discount, we do it, but try to get other concessions in return from the developer, which is either a commercial condition which is better or a technical matter which is superior, whatever it is. I'm not sure we want to be in a situation where we are so desperate to take orders to break the back of what we have. Yes, there are a few orders one needs to tend to do that, but to a large extent I think we are conservative and we will continue to be that.
So one last question. Going ahead, what will be your core focus in terms of sectors? Will you be taking forward the agenda that your predecessor, and what will be your core?
I have not succeeded anybody to have a predecessor. My chairman is very much there. He is very much on top of us. He runs a great ship, and he is highly focused person, highly energetic, and he takes us forward. You work in an organization for 32 years, there's a ladder in front of you, tend to climb one step up. I have just done that, or somebody has made me, the chairman has made me do that, the board has made me do that, that's all to it. So let's not get into any other discussion on that. Thank you.
Shubhra Tandon from the Financial Express.
Yes,
so what is the update on the slow moving orders now, and what percentage did form of the orders of the company now?
We have some slow-moving orders for various reasons. Number one reason is that we have taken these orders and then for various reasons the clients have either developed cold feet on going further, or they have deferred these projects, or they have postponed it till a further date. This, in my view, still from an overall backlog point of view is still not a thing that we need to get too unduly worried about. But these data we reveal at the end of the year. We will do that by March 16 31st. And at the moment, I feel it is something which we can manage with. We continue to try to push these jobs. For all you know, things become positive. Many of these jobs may start rolling much faster. So we leave it right now as it is.
Also, sir, the two projects that got a downgrade, the default rating. So, what is the update on that, and do you expect something to become positive on those?
See, a few things here. One is these are projects which have been financed on the security of the project cash flows. So there is no recourse to either the parent company, namely IDPL, which owns these projects, or the ultimate parent company, namely L&T. So I want to make it abundantly clear there is no breach of governance as so far as these holding companies are concerned. The banks which finance the projects and other financiers take a look at the project for its economics and cash flows and then decide to extend facilities. We know now very well that the trajectory of these cash flows tend to change and don't stick to a course. So there are points in time where the ability of the SPV to generate cash to service the obligation in time is not there. There are two ways in which you can deal with this. One is go back to the respective parent company and ask them to fund. So it's extra constitutional because I think there's no obligation to fund. So legally, I think we'll have to restrict the difficulty to the SPV. When it comes to SPV, ultimately the intent to pay is very much there because we're talking about a group who's sponsored several projects over several years. It's important to improve the cash flow to be able to discharge the obligation. If the cash flow mismatches are temporary, you don't go through the CDRs. It's not a bailout situation. So you need the relevant parties to get together, namely the banks, the concessionaire and the concession providing entity, to figure out how to realign the cash flows to pay, service the debt, which is what has happened in this case. The rating agencies are an obligation. The rating agencies will have to go not by all this that surrounds an event, but they will have to go by the hard fact whether on the due date whether the payment was made or not made. And again, there is nothing like gray. It's black or white. If you pay, you are performing. If you don't pay, you are non-performing. So consequently, they did their job. We had an opportunity to explain to them the situation. They appreciated it, but they had to announce this as a default. We have taken this call only to ensure that all of us take these cash flows with the seriousness that it deserves. And I must tell you that the tough call that we took had the desired effect. Now all the concerned parties are huddled together to see how to resolve this issue. So it's not a default because of inability to pay. It is a point which looked appropriate to tide over a certain situation, which is what the company has done. So it is not to be read as something which is going to be continuing. It is not to be read as something as inability of the parent to fund and support, and neither it should be taken as a view that we are just throwing the baby with the bathwater.
Right. Last quarter, famously you said describe the pace of government reforms at unhurried pace. And in this current context of cut-in guidance, what do you see? What is your comment on the pace of government reforms?
Cautiously optimistic.
And do you think that it is changing? So the pace is, what is the pace? How do you describe the pace of government reforms? I know the company is cautiously optimistic.
Fast-paced, cautiously optimistic.
Okay, so which would mean that by the end of this fiscal you could see some green shoots?
I answered that question. We see it's not that everything is bad. We see a lot of green shoots everywhere. But all of us think that there's a magic wand and it comes into play and things are going to become hunky-dory. It's not like that. There are a lot of things that have to get changed, which I described during the previous question. And I think many things are happening. And as you've seen, it's not that we have not had orders. We had orders. We could have done better. Maybe last year there was some bigger orders, so when you compare year to year in an infrastructure company, you do tend to see the differences that are there between quarter to quarter. Our results should be seen over the year, which is what Shankar has been saying over the times, and I will also join him in telling that to you. So let's remain cautiously optimistic and see the way forward.
Is it the right time to sell assets, Shankaram?
I'm sorry?
Is it right time to sell assets?
Well, I think there are two types of sellers. One is distressed sellers. I mean, they have to sell to fix their balance sheet. So it's right time for them. Then there are value sellers. I don't think it's right time for value sellers.
So we will not see distress sale from L&T at least.
L&T is not in distress.
And this was sale.
No, hence. Thank you very much.